Everybody, welcome back. We are doing some more forensic astrology on Nancy Guthrie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to examine 4 charts here. One of them we already did in a previous video. So that one I'm probably just going to summarize. And then after I do all the 4 charts, that I will do some cross-referencing. Because what we are doing is we're establishing a timeline starting with when she got home after her dinner outing to when the 911 call was placed. So there will be patterns, and I've already looked at all the charts off camera and compiled all my notes. There are consistencies that come up, themes that stitch this whole story together. And the charts that I am actually going to be covering, the last scene, January 31st, 2026 at 9:48 p.m. That's when she got home. That's when she was dropped off. And what I got wrong in that other video is I thought that's when the person appeared on camera. No, at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell cam was disconnected. The next chart we're going to look at is the pacemaker app disconnect. On the next day, on February 1st at 2:28, or on the same day, well, February 1st was the doorbell cam, then February 1st again at 2:28 a.m. Not quite an hour later, probably, I would say that looks like a half hour later. The app that her on her phone that connects to her pacemaker went offline or disconnected. Then the next chart we're going to look at is the 911 call that happened at 12:03 p.m. on February 1st. This is going to be a long one. So before we dig in, you may want to consider grabbing your snacks, grabbing your beverages, grabbing a big bowl of popcorn, and sit back and enjoy. What I have seen in these charts is just going to totally blow you away. Couple disclaimers. As you can see, this reading's for entertainment purposes only, not based on fact, just my interpretation of the chart. I make no claims here, and also I am not a professional astrologer. I am working on it. I am learning by leaps and bounds. So I ask that you do give me some grace. I greatly appreciate it. And I want to give a shout out to Kirsty McIntosh. She is the author of the original volume 1 of Criminal Astrology. I have obtained several of her other books and absorbing them like a sponge. And that is where I'm getting most of my interpretations and my analysis from. This is a system that I am learning. So if you would like to purchase any of her books, I will make sure I leave a link in the description box. Also, I will leave a link to her channel. She is here on YouTube. You can see her in action as well. Okay, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the charts, and we are going to start with the last scene. So we're going to start at the baseline. The baseline, this is the introductory to it. It happens at 9:48 p.m. This was the last confirmed time that Nancy was known to be alive, last proof of life, and that was when she was dropped off at her home. Now, this chart becomes the foundation for the entire timeline. Everything that unfolds later grows from this moment. So we start where we always start in forensic astrology, the angles. Now we're looking over here to the victim. That is Libra, right? Okay. There's nothing in this first house. Nothing going on. Makes sense. She gets home from her dinner. She goes into her house. Nothing going on. Now, as I progress through this, I want you to keep in mind, I believe there's been some media sources that have reported that allegedly the people that dropped Nancy off claimed that she seemed to be in good spirits, seemed to be happy, had a nice dinner, etc., etc. But there was something brewing on her mind. There's something still going on behind the scene. Okay. Now, the ascendant is 2%, 2%. I'm sorry, it's 9:30 p.m. I just want to get through this chart, and I'm mixing up my words. But the ascendant is 2 degrees Libra. Libra rising represents Nancy at this moment. Libra is harmony, balance, social ease, which kind of makes sense, right? She was in a social setting. Okay. Excuse me. And there's nothing about this ascendant that screams a crisis. It does simply suggest everything was normal. The ruler of Libra is Venus. And Venus is right here in the 5th house. Yeah, we got a lot going on here. But when you think about it, the 5th house could be a house of family, children, particularly. It's also a house of partying and things that give you pleasure. Yeah, she's in that, and she's communicating with Mercury right here, and she's mingling at dinner. Now, across the chart from Libra is the perpetrator, 2 degrees Aries. Aries on the 7th house represents the opposing force. Aries is direct action oriented and reactive. Okay. Aries is the god of war. His ruling planet is Mars. Mars is known as the warrior. Okay. The planet of war. It's a planet of passion. It's a planet of aggression, a planet of ambition. Okay. The rulers, this is where the real story begins. Now, here's where the chart immediately becomes structured. Venus, ruler of the victim, is at 18 degrees Aquarius, and Mars, the ruler of the perpetrator, is at 6 degrees Aquarius. Both rulers are in the same sign. That tells us something critical. The victim and the perpetrator's energies are operating inside the same environment. Now, I'm a little bit ignorant to the fact of who Nancy was having dinner with. Was she having dinner with her daughter and her son-in-law? Okay. Tommaso or whatever his name is, however you say it. I've heard so many pronunciations. Some people even jokingly saying tomato. Okay. But at the same time, this is not two separate worlds colliding either. This is shared context. Very close proximity. Okay. Now, this Aquarius stellium here. All these signs in Aquarius. All these planets in Aquarius, I mean. Ugh. It's not just Venus and Mars. We have Pluto at 3 degrees. We have Mars at 6 degrees. The Sun at 12 degrees. Venus at 18 degrees. Mercury at 19 degrees. That's a packed house. That's a powerhouse. That is a structured progression. This is a progression of events. Okay? Pluto goes to Mars. Mars answers to the Sun. The Sun goes to Venus and then to Mercury. Power, action, identity, the relationship, and the communication. Aquarius is fixed air. It's detached, systematic, coordinated, often techie oriented. The environment feels calculated, not impulsive. The 4th house, home and foundation. It's on 2 degrees Capricorn. Capricorn rules structure, rules foundations, built environments, and property and boundaries. The ruler of the fourth is Saturn. Saturn is at 28 degrees Pisces, right up here in the sixth house. So the house axis is not isolated. It kind of feeds into Saturn in Pisces in the house of routine. This ties the domestic foundations right here to the daily pattern and possibly something obscured with Neptune right here within that routine. And then Pluto near the fourth and fifth region by a degree here, but structurally, the fourth ruler is Saturn. Saturn is not in the fourth, it's in the sixth. This is an important distinction. Pluto is a disruptor. The tarot card associated with Pluto is the Tower. Okay, it's things. It's like things blowing up in order to build new. It's shedding the old to make way for the new. Pluto is not a very comfortable energy, typically. So, but I digress. We'll move forward. The sixth house up here of the routine and pattern, we have Saturn at 28 degrees Pisces, Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. 0 is the total raw energy of its sign. Pure Aries, nothing else, right? It is pure aggression, pure me. It is pure ambition and movement and action. Now, Saturn restricts and Neptune obscures. Together in the sixth house of routine, that can show something constrained within the daily patterns, and that is unclear or hidden within the routine. And there's fog surrounding the habits or movements. And Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, as I said, is raw energy. And it suggests something is just beginning. It's not something long standing, it's something beginning. So the chain becomes Neptune, fog and routine, Mars, the perpetrator, that Aquarius stellium in the environment. That is structural. That is not random. Now we need to talk about Chiron here, because to me this stood out like a sore thumb. Yeah, that's, you would think your eye would automatically go down here, but in this chart, my eye immediately went to Chiron in Aries in the seventh house. So this is around the perpetrator. The seventh house, with this in the seventh house, is suggesting a conflict tied to injury, a grievance, or pain. And even in my card readings, I mentioned this, that there was some kind of beef that a certain person had with Nancy. And legal reasons, even though I say this is entertainment purposes only, and of course, I do not want to derail any police investigations. Not that the police is going to watch this video anyhow, but there's something here that I kept saying, and she came out in the cards even, that someone felt like they were done an injustice. They weren't treated fairly. And Chiron is a wound that festers, and the universe kind of calls that individual to heal that within themselves, and then outwardly recognize others that are going through things and help them heal. That's why this is called the wounded healer. Now, this here does not tell us who, but it tells us the conflict axis is wounded. And Chiron at 23 degrees is not early, it's mid to late degree. So this is suggesting an established pain. This is not a brand new irritation. Okay. The other thing, Uranus up here in the eighth house. The eighth house is other people's money. It is inheritance, insurance, documents. It's the eighth house and the second house are the two money houses, but it's also a house of transformation and death. Okay, figuratively or literally. The eighth house in true crime, it rules crisis, trauma, transformation, and destabilization. Uranus here is suggesting a sudden disruption. Something stable becomes unstable very fast. It was like somebody going from 0 to 180 in 2 seconds. I mean, it's something unexpected, boom, that happens. It's a shock factor. Okay. Now, we are going to move over to this 10th house here. What we have going on in the 10th house is we have the moon at 2 degrees Leo and Jupiter at 17 degrees Cancer. The moon represents Nancy's condition and the unfolding of events. Now, in Leo, Leo's like known to be life of the party, very public, very outspoken. That might have been one of Nancy's downfalls. I don't know. I don't know her personally. I'm not saying that that's what's in the chart. Intuitively, I got that she might be opinionated a little bit. I haven't seen her birth chart. That maybe she just speaks her mind and somebody over here got their panties all twisted. Okay? Just so you know, I am an intuitive reader. I'm seeing things in this chart and I'm getting images. I'm getting messages. Okay. So when something does not come from the chart, I will let you know. But anyhow, with that said, Jupiter over here is representing the expansion and legal and public visibility. So right off the bat, it doesn't take very long for Nancy Guthrie's disappearance to go viral. It's not just localized there in Tucson or even in Arizona or the West or even the United States. This is worldwide. I mean, Jupiter there is doing its job. It spread the word about Nancy, okay? And this case is not. These two together here in the 10th house is definitely saying, you think you're going to keep this hush hush? Shh. Zip the lip. Nope, nope. It becomes very public. Now, the moon applying sequence. What happens next? So we're going to kind of track the moon. I'm not going to show a shit ton of screens. I'm just going to tell you what's going on. Okay? Because the moon shows what unfolds after 9:48 p.m. At 2 degrees Leo, the moon first is applied to an opposition with Pluto, and that perfects to exact at 10:13 p.m. So we have some kind of something disruption. That could be very well her sleep being disrupted at that time, or she's getting ready for bed. Her routine is restricted. It's disrupted. So within about 25 minutes of her being dropped off, yeah, that's probably not long enough for her to get ready for bed and get in bed and get to sleep. The moon hits Pluto, which is power, control, and concealment. After that, the moon continues forward and applies itself next to Mars. It sits itself down and it opposes Mars, the ruler of the perpetrator. And this opposition comes in perfects itself around 3:41 a.m. Her pacemaker disconnected. I think it was at 2:28 a.m. So over an hour later, that moon opposes Mars. Okay. But by the time we reach that doorbell camera timestamp at 1:46, the moon has already completed its opposition to Pluto and is actively applying to Mars. So the sequence, Pluto, then Mars, is power, then action. That's not storytelling, that's timing. Right there. You want to know timeline, you want to know when things went down? It went down right there. Okay? So, what does this baseline chart actually prove? Allegedly, it shows victim and perpetrator rulers entangled in the same Aquarius environment. They're in the same space, they're in the same building, they're in the same room, honey. A structured, coordinated atmosphere. It's not chaotic, it's not random. The home access feeds into the routine patterns, the fog and restriction within the daily structure, the wounded conflict in the seventh house, sudden crisis potential in the eighth, hello, and public escalation built in the 10th. When the moon activated Pluto and then Mars shortly after the drop off. So this chart does not support long-term stalking narrative or some kind of stranger. It does not, to me, this does not scream stranger. Because the Chiron here, this is somebody with a personal beef. Okay. So a lot of tension. And it looks like events unfolded boom, 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 all within just a few short hours. So the next thing we are going to do is we're going to move forward to the 146, 147 a.m., the doorbell camera that disconnected, and see how this pressure system develops. Okay. And we went over this. I went over this in detail. Oh, it changed a little bit. Is that the one that I want? 146 a.m., the doorbell cam. Yeah. It shifted. Oh, this was a couple minutes difference. Because I think it was 1:45 a.m. I originally had. So everything shifted, third house, fourth house. Chiron in the fifth. So now we're going to dissect this one. I feel like I need to redo it. Not saying that the other one was invalid, because the previous video where I went over, where I thought it was a perp on camera, but it wasn't. It might have been. It actually might have been. Maybe that was him trying to disconnect the camera. I don't know. But it was what was going on a couple minutes before this chart. So we're going to go ahead and dig into this one. It's the next day. I decided to put this chart off until this morning while I'm having my coffee. I just couldn't keep my eyes open. I swear I was looking at these charts and I was seeing 3 charts instead of 1 chart and everything like blurred, like that double vision type effect. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done. So let's dig into this chart number 2, the doorbell camera disconnect or disabled at 1:46 a.m. on February 1st, 2026. Okay, so this is not the one where the person was detected, right? And I did that the other day, and that wasn't even correct as far as person being detected. That was simply just the moments leading up to when the doorbell goes offline. So it doesn't discredit the other video I did the other day. It's just mislabeled, I would call it. It was more, like I said, the moments leading up to, is a few minutes before the doorbell went offline, the camera. So we're going to start with the angles. As always, the ascendant and descendant. Here we have the ascendant over here, Scorpio, 22 degrees. That immediately sets the tone of secrecy, privacy, intensity, and things happening behind the scenes. And Scorpio rising charts don't play nice and tidy. They usually show hidden motives and missing information. Right away, I get the impression intuitively that there's things about Nancy, probably in her private life, that's not public yet, that has not been made public. I'm willing to bet there's some family dynamics and things going on that Nancy has kept pretty close to her chest. She should have, in my opinion, she should have told somebody. I'm just saying. Now we move over here to the descendant. The descendant is Taurus, 22 degrees Taurus. And this is the opposing energy. This is the defendant, perpetrator. And it's physical, practical, slow moving, but it's also fixed. This can describe the perp's energy. That is maybe this perpetrator is very stubborn, dug in, unmoved. This is someone who doesn't budge once they commit to something, to some sort of course of action. So this perpetrator had an agenda and wasn't wavering it. And in some of the tarot readings, I had kind of alluded to, this is somebody who is desperate. Okay. So it kind of makes sense that he or she being represented by a fixed sign like Taurus. I mean, Taurus digs his heels in. Okay. Now, we have Uranus on the descendant 7th house. It's at 27 degrees. It's not a real tight orb to the descendant, but it's there. It's definitely relevant because there's a 5-degree difference there. It's close enough to the descendant that I treat it like it's sitting on the perpetrator's doorstep. Now, Uranus in the 7th can show a sudden escalation, something unexpected, abnormal. This is an event that doesn't follow normal human behavior. And it can also show technology-related disruption, which is interesting given that we are literally talking about a camera going offline. Now, something I want to point out also from the previous chart. Uranus is in Taurus, but it's in a late degree. Then over here, it was way up here, and now it's over here. It moved a bit. It's still late degree, but I'm talking about the houses. Let me rephrase that. Late part of the house, towards the end, getting ready to move into Cancer, right? Or getting ready to move into the 9th house. And this chart is sitting in the 8th, which gave us some clues. But now it's at the beginning of the 7th house, which is interesting. Okay. Now, let me get back on track with my notes. I'm not saying that it proves how it happened. I'm saying Uranus is absolutely consistent with the nature of this moment. Something abrupt, disruptive, and not routine. It's not exactly normal to turn off a doorbell camera. Now, the engine of this chart here, the Aquarius stellium, it is a packed 3rd house. What does the 3rd house govern? It's technology as one and communication. There's other things. There's things like short distance travel and stuff. But the question that we were looking at, we want to know what was going on about that doorbell camera going offline. It's screaming at us right here. We've got a stack of Aquarius planets in the 3rd house. And guess what? What does Aquarius govern? It's the collective, it's public stuff. It can talk about things going on in the community as well. And what does that doorbell cam do? It does connect. Some of them can connect to a cloud server. It's all here. But we have Pluto at 3 degrees, Mars at 7 degrees, the Sun at 12 degrees, Venus at 18 degrees, and Mercury at 20. Technically, they aren't really conjunct, but they are conjunct. They're clustered in the same house. This is a very loosey-goosey conjunction, but it still makes their interaction relevant. What we have here is a boom, 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 boom chain of events. And this loaded 3rd house, in forensic work, it pulls themes like the neighborhood, close proximity, local movement, short distances, communication, phones, messages, vehicles, quick trips, and yes, sometimes it's a dual type of house in practice, especially when Mercury is emphasized in here. So, the plot thickens, folks. It's not that I'm seeing a second perpetrator in the house with Nancy, but there's some little talky going on the phonies or something, some kind of device. There's communication, dual communication, in my opinion, especially in a communicative house. Like they could be saying step by step, hey, I've got the doorbell camera disconnected. It's offline. So that Aquarius kind of is the seasoning of this third house, of what's going on with the planets in it. You know, the tech and systems and networks, something planned or engineered, and there is a detachment, a coldness, a clinical thinking here. So, and I would say this is somebody who is tech savvy, in my opinion. So when you combine that zone plus the communication plus the tech system themes, during this exact moment, a camera disconnects. And that's not surface level. That is the chart matching the headline. The doorbell camera goes offline. Now we're going to look at the fourth house. This is the end of the matter, right? That's primarily in a true crime chart what we look at. The fourth house also traditionally represents the home, you know, personal space, property inside the house, okay? We have Saturn at 28 degrees Pisces, and we have Neptune at a very, very critical degree in its rawest form. We're talking pure obscurity, pure illusion, that fog that Neptune creates at 0 degrees Aries. This is acting in a fog, acting in the dark even, because this obscures. This is also a planet of deception, even lies. Okay, so this Neptune and Saturn aspect here, this is very important. They are in a tight conjunction across a sign line. Same house was crossing over signs. The Pisces Aries. This is a tight aspect in real life chart reading. Saturn plus Neptune, tight, can look like restriction and fog, restriction and confusion. Something being controlled while also being obscured. And because it's the fourth house, this points to home, property, and end of matter zone. And as being where the fog meets the wall. And there's something about the home storyline is constrained and unclear at the same time. So, you know, I do this with my cards too. I see something like this and something pops into my head. Doesn't mean it's what this conjunction means, or technically the chart, but what I just saw in my mind is somebody being potentially bound, potentially blindfolded. You know, they don't know what's going on. And you figure it's in the middle of the night when she should be sleeping. The chart, to me, I might be wrong. Professional astrologers might be able to tell me, but this feels like somebody being tied up and blindfolded. You know, the person allegedly was wearing a mask. And I kind of wonder, the doorbell cam, you know, there was that picture all over the internet of somebody caught on a doorbell cam. There's also a report out there that says that the camera was still recording, but the video was off. Couldn't see the person. This is alleged. There are rumors out there that I heard that doorbell video footage that was circulating was fake AI type, not the real thing. And that could be under the skies of this Neptune also. And we're talking about the doorbell camera at the house, right? So that illusion, that's where I got my another intuitive hit. It's like, it's making me wonder about those rumors saying that was an AI generated picture to make it look like that was Nancy's doorbell cam. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it could have been some other random. Somebody could have got on Ring and said and got on the Ring network and got a photograph and posted it saying, "Oh, this was at Nancy's house." So there's some kind of illusion around the doorbell camera footage. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, now the moon. This is where the emotional clock is. How timing progresses. Right up here. So the moon is moving the clock hand. The moon at 5 degrees Leo. Sitting up in the ninth house. Ninth house is long distance travel. You know, this could be Savannah getting ready to travel. I don't think Savannah lived near her mother. I don't think. I could have my facts wrong, but I think she lived a little ways away. So that could be traveling by night, long distance. Doesn't have to be by night. I don't know why I said by night, but it's the clock. And the moon Leo adds a little bit of visibility, attention, drama, pride. This becomes seen. And yes, it can correlate with the case becoming louder publicly over time. What matters most here is what the moon is doing. The moon's key is applying a sequence. This is the timing backbone, and it is separating from an opposition to Pluto and applying an opposition to Mars. So this says that something already clicked with Pluto or crossed a threshold just before this moment. Pluto oppositions are powerful control, irreversible shifts. And applying it to the Mars, hitting Mars, this is the next hit. Mars oppositions are conflict, force, confrontation, some kind of action being taken. There's an escalation of events. So the moon moving from Pluto opposition to Mars opposition looks like a progression of power, control to action and escalation. After that, the moon will go on to oppose the rest of the Aquarius stack. In sequence, the sun, a little bit looser, and it'll come in opposition a little bit later, which we'll probably see in the upcoming charts that I have. Then it's going to oppose Venus and then Aquarius. Right now, during the doorbell camera, the two big players in oppositions is Pluto and Mars. So this isn't showing stuff happening all at once. It's showing a sequence, pressure points that are rolling forward as we go through this. So I'm reading this like a forensic clock. And Pluto opposition is something locked in or shifted. Mars was next, the escalation, the action. And then the rest of the oppositions, the story spreads into identity, people, relationships, and communications. Okay, another thing that is huge. We're going to move up here to Jupiter in the eighth. Jupiter in the eighth, there is an aspect happening with Venus, exact 18 degrees or almost exact 17 degrees. I just want to point that out too. So it's going back to the stellium also. It's not an opposition. I think it's like a sextile type thing. I can't remember the exact name of this, but it's right here. I think that's a sextile. We'll get into that. But we cannot ignore the fact that Jupiter is sitting in Cancer, and it's in the eighth house. And this can amplify investigative themes, shared resources, other people's money, insurance themes, but it can also expand the seriousness of the eighth house storyline. Transformation. And I just got to say that I'm not predicting it. I just got to say it. This is the house of death. This house is ruled by. We're going to get a little bit of traditional astrology in here because I'm being told to point this out. Scorpio. Scorpio rules the eighth house. Death, transformation. And it's also like the other people's money and everything else I mentioned. And Cancer is, water, 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 emotions. Let me just say that too. Cancer is the natural ruler of the fourth house, of home, family, domestic content, caregiving. So I'm not turning this into a conclusion. I'm just saying the eighth house is emphasized and Jupiter makes it bigger. This is like the eighth house was just giving us a couple shots of espresso. Yeah, it's a little bit rambunctious with that in there. So something big expanse in the 8th house. This could be also emphasizing big money. Jupiter's not the planet of surprise. It's not the planet. It's not like it's Mars or Pluto sitting there, but it's definitely loud. Okay, Charon's in the 5th house of children. It's pleasures, but this is also children. This is a wounded child. I want to point that out too. And it is trining the 10th house, the public. So there might be some public knowledge that could come out, but that's South Node. I don't typically bring, and I don't know if I've ever seen anybody else. There's only a couple people I've watched that was doing forensic astrology. Bring in South Node or North Node things into a forensic chart. But I can't ignore it in this instance. And it was in the previous chart too. Let me go back there for 1 second. It was over here in the 12th house. And South Node things are dealing with the past, repetitive lessons, karmic things, and yes, it could be past life things that are brought into this life. But past is key. North Node is your destiny, your life path going through this current life term. This is your past stuff. In the 12th of hidden, and this screams, not to get into spiritual stuff on this, but past life karma. Now in this chart, it's coming up here in the 10th, and it is trining Charon. There are some past issues that are unresolved with a child. I'm just going to leave it at that, but it is worth mentioning, I think. So in this chart, we're going to, the big takeaways from this doorbell camera disconnection, the Scorpio rising, there are some hidden factors. Not all the facts are visible at this time. Uranus in the 7th, that's that abrupt, disruptive perpetrator side energy. Technology disruption fits the moment. Hello, Uranus. Okay, and the Aquarius stellium in the 3rd, local zone and communications and tech, multiple moving parts here of a bigger picture. Now, Saturn, Neptune, tight in the 4th, home angle. It's both restrictive and foggy. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Anyhow, the moon timing shows a progression. Pluto and Mars and the rest of the Aquarius stack, which supports the timeline where each planet's going to get pinged in this scenario. So that's my summary of this, and I would say it fits. It fits. It all makes sense. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move forward to where her pacemaker goes offline. Chart, I just want to make this last comment. I did make a note in the video where I was talking about a sextile with Jupiter right here. That's not a sextile. Sextile is 60 degrees. This is a quintux, which is 150 degrees. Big difference. So, and this is important. A quintux is not cooperation, it's an adjustment. So Jupiter in the 8th is not smoothly supporting Venus, the perpetrator, in the 3rd. There's a misalignment between the crisis themes and the local communication. So basically, in layman terms, Jupiter in the 8th is amplification of the crisis, expansion of the hidden matters. There's an investigative tone and a seriousness of this event. And then the Venus, the ruler of the 7th, perpetrator, about the relationships and agreements, the planning, the communication, local environment, and this quincunx, it could suggest something between the perpetrator and the 8th house crisis themes do not align. Clearly, there's an adjustment required, something operating at cross purposes. There may be an imbalance in expectations versus consequences, a decision or action that didn't fully account for outcomes. It's not smooth, it's not flowing, it's kind of awkward and slightly off axis. So, what this is saying in layman terms is something didn't go to a plan and adjustments had to be made on the fly. So put a pin in that. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next chart. This is where Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from her phone. Like the app couldn't pick it up anymore. That's a red flag. But this happened at 2:28 a.m. And to me, this is a major shifting point because a pacemaker disconnecting means distance from the phone. There was interference or some kind of major environmental change. Something changed physically that her phone, Bluetooth, was not picking up on her pacemaker. Okay, let's dissect this. Daisy, stop! I hope the mailman holds off a little bit before coming because then the dogs are going to go nuts. But anyhow, look at this. 1 degree, Sagittarius. So, we had this pivotal point, and let's just say Jupiter's still up here in the 8th house. Okay, a pivotal point that may have caused a sudden departure. I'm just saying because Sagittarius, it rules the 9th house of distance, movement, travel. It's leaving a location. It's expansion beyond its boundaries, the home boundaries. Okay. And this Sagittarius rising changed to this the whole tone. And this is Nancy. She's on the move. So Nancy's signature is no longer that Scorpio containment. It's movement, and that's important. Now, things are about to get pretty dicey here. Let's move over here. What is it that I say all the time? I what? I what? Comment below. I shit you not. Moment. But a set of cards is within the chart. Okay. We've got a dual sign here. This is 2 perpetrators, not 1. So something happened in the time between the doorbell camera going off, getting turned off, disconnected, and the pacemaker. Something big that involved 2 people. Are you ready for this? Diving into this. This is 2 elements, communication, devices, signal exchange. Ruler of Gemini is Mercury. This is the last thing in the sequence of this stellium. Folks, I think we're in the final act. Still have the 911 call, but that's the aftermath. This is the final act of the ping, 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 ping. Venus got pinged by Jupiter in a way of something didn't go quite right for the perpetrator. They had to make an adjustment on the fly, in my opinion. Okay, now we're here with Mercury communication. Oh shit, what do I do now? What do we do now? And then we've got on the move. And Mercury in that stellium, the perpetrator axis is now ruled by Mercury in Aquarius. That ties this movement even tighter to technology, systems, communication, and electronic monitoring, aka app pacemaker. And this fits the movement perfectly about the pacemaker losing its signal. Now, the stellium itself, the whole cluster hasn't moved very far. Pluto's now in the 2nd house, but all still in Aquarius. We still have 4 of these planets in this stellium in the 3rd house. And, but the moon has shifted. And this is what changes everything. The moon now is in the 8th house at 5 degrees Leo. Nearly in the moon in Leo. Now clearly, very clearly, not nearly, I meant to say clearly. Pardon my stroke aftermath, but clearly in the 8th house. That's the crisis territory. 8th house equals death, trauma, something irreversible, something transformed as irreversible, other people's resources, and yes, medical crisis. See why I said it's going to get a little bit dicey here? And I got to try to be sensitive and be careful about how I word things here. This is no small deal here. This is a major event that happened, probably health-wise, especially when we're talking about a pacemaker. Okay. And, the Leo moon here adds a spotlight on the crisis. There's an emotional peak, something dramatic or significant. Now look at what it's doing. Its tight oppositions are still active. Opposing Pluto by 3 degrees, still tight. There's only like a 2-degree orb. Mars opposition is 7 degrees, still tight. There is still sustained pressure here. Moon opposing Mars, action, force, acceleration. These are tight. This is not background. This is exact. Okay, now back here at the Neptune and Saturn, fourth house. There's a 7-degree difference. There is a semi-loose conjunction here. It goes a little bit beyond my tight conjunction, but these are in a tight cross sign conjunction is what they call this. Now, oh no, I stand corrected. I was looking at the wrong thing. That is a tight conjunction. 2 degrees. My bad. And Neptune is on that critical point of 0 degrees Aries. Meanwhile, the Saturn is very tight at 28 degrees, almost critical degrees. We're in that critical degree territory. And we've mentioned this before. I've mentioned this before. Saturn restricts, Neptune dissolves here, dissolving that restriction. In the fourth house, home, property, foundations, end of matter, the physical base. That restriction and the dissolution at the foundation, something structural dissolving or breaking down. Given the event is medical device related, this is highly relevant. And note, Neptune, 0 degrees Aries is a critical degree territory. That's the beginning of a cycle energy. Something is initiating. Okay. This is huge, folks. As much as I want to spell it out, I'll let you, this is where I'm going to leave you to your own intuition and conclusion there. Okay, moving forward. Uranus is in the 6th house, 27 degrees Taurus. It's getting close to that 7 degrees, but it still kind of affects that Gemini energy. Now, Uranus is that sudden disruption, that electrical malfunction, an unexpected change. The pacemaker is a mechanical health system. It monitors the heart rate. Uranus in the 6th is very loud here, and it's in Taurus, the physical body territory. Let me say that again. The physical body territory. I'm spelling it out without spelling it out, okay? Now, we kind of touched on Jupiter up here a little bit, but 17 degrees Cancer in that 8th house. Let me go back here for a second. Yeah, it was in the 8th house at 17 degrees when the doorbell cam went offline. And now it's still 17 degrees, but it's still in the 8th house with the moon. Okay? 8th house in Cancer. First of all, the 8th house crisis is amplified. It's like, give me another shot of espresso, sweetheart. Now, in Cancer represents a family, home ties, emotional connection. This could suggest, allegedly, entertainment purposes only, could suggest, not definite, just, I'm emphasizing this because about what I'm about to say, could suggest family becomes involved, or family is involved. Becoming clear that family is involved at this moment. There is that emotional connection. And this is the crisis expanding into the family awareness. I've said this before, and we have it right here. There's more than one person involved in whatever happened to sweet Nancy over here. Okay? One was a facilitator, one was a communicator. One was probably barking orders. Just saying. Now, this allegedly a family becoming very aware of what's going on, I'm willing to bet that there was some kind of communication like, hey, oh shit, there's something very wrong here. We're in trouble here. Now, let's take a look at some of these aspects. I'm going to leave that there. Okay. Moon opposing Mars, tight. This is major. We've been seeing that throughout this whole event. Looking chart by chart by chart. The moon has been in opposition with Mars and Pluto. Now, we have Jupiter trining Saturn. Hello! Jupiter trining Saturn. This is a loose water trine. There appears to be a water flow between Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. That would be a trine by element, possibly a wide trine because of the degrees. 28 degrees, 17 degrees. That's like an 11-degree difference. So it's a trine by element, by sign. Okay. And if within an orb, that would be stabilizing through a crisis. If wide, it's background support. So I was this second other person involved is probably giving support from a distance. Background, communication, telephone calls. Yeah, some of this is coming in as intuitive hits. I just got to say that. Now, Jupiter now Jupiter it still has a loose quin here. I can't pronounce that conjunction, so I'm just calling it a quin. And this is air versus water. So there's something not in cooperation. There might even be friction between the two people. Now let's see. What has shifted from the doorbell, this chart over here, to this chart, the pacemaker, and that's almost close to a 45. I'm gonna guesstimate 45-minute difference. 1:46 a.m. to 2:28 a.m. The ascendant shifted from Scorpio to Sag. The focus shifted from concealment control to movement and distance. I would say at this point, Nancy was in a car. Nancy was being taken away from the house. The moon moved deeper into the 8th house. That's progression. The first chart showed that disruption. This one shows an escalation into crisis territory. And I'm sorry, my heart goes out to the family members and friends who really loved Nancy, and whoever did this can rot in hell. I'm just saying. And I'm sorry, my I don't want to say condolences because I'm not gonna put the cart before the horse. But I'm going to say my heartfelt prayers are with the family and friends of Nancy. Things don't look good here. And we already know she did not have her meds. Her meds were not taken with her. Why? If this was just going to be a simple abduction to get for ransom, to get some money off of Savannah or whoever, why not take her meds? Keep her healthy. Just saying. And and when I'm done with this, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to throw some cards on the different things that we have found out in these charts and see if we could get some more information. This video is already long enough. I'm not going to add cards to it. But anyhow, I'm going to go into summarizing this chart at the right now. So let's just go through it. At 2:28 a.m., we see the moon in the 8th, tightly opposing Pluto and Mars in Aquarius. Uranus in the 6th, disrupting health systems, and Saturn, Neptune tightly conjunct in the 4th of the foundation and the end of matter. This is not subtle. This is structure escalation into a medical or physical threshold moment. So this chart is definitely a bit heavier. And I just kind of want to go a little bit deeper into this chart because this chart carries a lot heavier energy. So we're going to look at rulership chain breakdown here. What's ruling what and where does the power ultimately flow to? This is going to tell us where the energy ends up and who is answering to who. Who is in control of this narrative? Hey, that's a little bit too close to my computer with that bark. So, the ascendant rulership chain. The ascendant is Sagittarius. Ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. Where is Jupiter? 8th house. So this entire chart because the ascendant ruler sets the tone, ultimately answers to Jupiter in the 8th. That means the victim situation lens is filtered through crisis, hidden matters, life, death, threshold, transformation, medical events, shared resources, investigation. This is not some little subtle energy. This is not unicorns and rainbows, honey. Go to Disney World for that. Now, Jupiter in Cancer. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And the moon's right here. It's in Leo, actually. So the chain is the ascendant, Jupiter to the moon. Okay. Moon being 5 degrees Leo in the 8th house. And now that's huge. Because now the victim lens, 8th house, moon in the 8th house, opposing Pluto and Mars. This is where I probably should put a special effect, a boom, because that's explosive. That's huge. That's escalation tied directly to a crisis. Now, that says a hell of a lot now, doesn't it? That's almost a really good summary for this whole entire segment on this chart. Okay, so the predator. Yeah, I almost want to call him a predator. Him or he or she or them. Because that Mercury. This just kind of puts my stomach in knots. So, we've got Gemini here. Ruler of Gemini is Mercury. Where is Mercury? In Aquarius in the 3rd house stellium. Right here. And it's at the tail end. So, perpetrator answers to Mercury in Aquarius. Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn. The modern rulership is Uranus. Let's follow both of these chains. The traditional chain, Mercury in Aquarius, ruled by Saturn. Saturn is over here in Pisces in the 4th house. Not only that, that brings the storyline to home, foundation, property, end of matter zone. Now the modern chain, Uranus and Taurus, going from Mercury to Uranus in Taurus, right up here very close to the descendant. Okay, this is in the 6th house. So, perpetrator energy, Mercury, Uranus, 6th house. The 6th house, daily routine, health, systems, mechanical functioning, physical body. Very interesting because the event is a medical device disconnect. So, the perpetrator chain routes into the 4th house home and 6th house health systems. That's not generic. That's very, very specific. Now, the next thing, the stellium chain. Pluto, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, all in Aquarius. They all answer to Saturn traditionally or Uranus modern. And where are those? Again, hello. 4th house, 6th house. So this entire Aquarius engine right here is routing in the 4th house home foundation and the health system disruption. That's extremely clean and structurally sound. That perfectly right there describes the pacemaker disconnecting from the app. Now, the other important thing in this chart was the moon, and we're going to follow its chain. Or some people call it a depositor. The moon's depositor chain. Okay, the moon in Leo. Leo ruled by the sun. The sun's in Aquarius in the 3rd house stellium. So, the moon, the sun, then that goes to Saturn, Aquarius, 4th house, 6th house rulerships. That means the emotional crisis body of the chart ultimately feeds back into home, family, 4th house, health system, disruption in the 6th. That's a closed loop. This is not random scatter. And why does this matter? When the depositors keep funneling into the same houses repeatedly. Daisy! Those houses are the structure or structural anchors. So, in this chart, 4th, 6th, 8th houses. These are your hot zones. Home, health systems, crisis. And all chains route back to these three. Now, this is the kind of detail that elevates this analysis. It's not speculation. This was not intuition. This is structural chain logic. The only other things I want to look at here is loops, a closed loop, which you the whole chart kind of looped, and any kind of final depositors. What a final depositor is, it's when the rolling planet lands in its own sign. Okay. Now, Saturn in Pisces, this is not self-contained. It's not that it's a final depositor, but it's worth noting that there is a loop here. But Saturn is not in Capricorn or Aquarius, so it's not self-contained. There is another loop, Uranus in Taurus, Venus in Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus, so Uranus, Venus, and Saturn, Uranus. That's a loop, but not self-owned. Neptune in Aries. Let me see. Neptune in Aries. Kind of like another loop. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Aquarius. Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus. So Neptune, Mars, that's another, and Saturn, Uranus. That is another loop. Fourth and sixth house. I'm looking for significant loops here. Okay, so there's nothing here that's a final depositor. I would say that's not the end of the story. But this entire chart ultimately oscillates between structure containment, Saturn, fourth home, foundation, end of month, sudden disruption, Uranus in the sixth, health systems, routine, mechanical functioning. That dual rulership is very important because Aquarius energy isn't owned by one stable planet here. It's split between Saturn, and which is that structure, and Uranus, which is the shock. That's tension, that's instability. That's not a chart where one planet calmly controls the narrative. It's a chart where authority is divided. Mutual receptors. I'm looking. There's no clean two-planet mutual receptions either. So you may be asking what a mutual reception is. It's when two planets are in each other's signs. So it's like they're staying in each other's houses. That creates a closed loop between them, and they're feeding each other's energy directly. If planet A is in a sign ruled by planet B, and planet B is in the sign ruled by planet A. That's the simple, easiest way to explain that. In forensic astrology, in crime charts especially, a mutual reception can show two areas of life locked together. So, for example, if the ruler of the seventh house and the ruler of the fourth house were a mutual reception, that would tightly bind the perpetrator energy to the home. It creates a closed circuit, and that makes it very relevant. It's not the same as a conjunction. And so now what I want to do next is I want to do a little bit of a comparison of what happened in that 45 minutes. I want to compare two charts here, and they look very, very close to being the same. But I think the biggest movement is the moon, because here the moon is in the ninth house, then it moves into the eighth. I should have put these the other way around. This is going to get confusing. I'm going to change these around so they're in chronological order. Okay, let's get on with this. Pause, right? Hit the pause button at this point. If you're still with me, God bless you, because we're well over an hour into this. We have a very quick section here, and then we're going to go into the final chart. But go fill up that popcorn bowl. Go refresh your drinks, because we're not quite done. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but it's been a wild one. Okay, now what we're doing here is we're doing a cross-chart structural comparison. I have both charts on the screen, and we're comparing the doorbell cam at 1:46 a.m. and the pacemaker disconnection at 2:28 a.m. I'm not doing a redo of every detail. I'm just looking for structural repeats and major shifts. Daisy, stop! Dutton! Daisy! I had to pause for a second because the doggies were getting out of hand. Anyhow, what do we have going on? We did have the axis shift. This is big. The doorbell camera, we had that Scorpio rising with the Taurus descendant. The pacemaker chart, it shifted from there to Sagittarius rising and Gemini descendant. This isn't minor. That's a shift from that concealment, control, containment with the Scorpio to the Sagittarius, that movement, that distance, that expansion beyond boundaries. The first chart over here, it feels contained, it feels hidden. This chart feels like something has moved. Okay. On the descendant side, okay, Taurus is fixed, physical, deliberate, and that moves from that to duality and communication. Signal a two-party dynamic here. Two parts to this whole perpetrator scenario. So the perpetrator axis shifts from fixed physical control to communication, signal dynamics. And what is the event? A medical device losing signal. And that's not some kind of random off-the-cuff symbolism there. Now, in both charts, the Aquarius stellium kind of stays around the third house. That's not random either. It doesn't move very far in 40 minutes like it did going from the pre-ring doorbell camera, or from the time she got home, we'll say. From the time she got home till this, there was quite a bit of a shift. There was even a shift from the fourth house to the third house within minutes from right before this doorbell camera went offline to when it did become disconnected. But between these two, there's very little difference in that. So the engine of the story still remains that technology, local proximity, communication, movement within a short radius, coordination. That is the backbone across both charts here. Now, the moon escalation timeline. The moon in Leo, okay, over here in the pacemaker chart, the moon is still in Leo, but now clearly in the 8th house. That's escalation. Same opposition geometry, just different house emphasis. So in the doorbell footage, the moon is opposing the Pluto and Mars, pressure building. In the pacemaker, the chart, same opposition is now sitting in the 8th house. That is crisis territory. It's not a new story. It's just one that intensified. 4th house activation. Okay. Doorbell. It's activated with the Saturn and Neptune, which are tight. And it's still holding that in the pacemaker chart. That doesn't move. That restriction and fog at the foundation remains constant. So the home and the property end of matter axis is not leaving the story. The storyline's not changing there. Now Uranus moves context. Doorbell chart. Uranus in the 7th house. That's that perpetrator, the disruption from the perpetrator side. Over here in the pacemaker, it's a mechanical issue because it's now in the 6th house. Now, this is just geometry matching the event type. Depositor funnel. What stayed the same? In both charts, Aquarius planets. Saturn in the 4th and Uranus in the 6th. Both charts ultimately funnel into the 4th house of home, foundations, and of matter. 6th house of the health systems and mechanical routine. That's very powerful because it means the structure anchors of the case stayed stable across timestamps. What jumps out the most? The Aquarius 3rd house engine never leaks. The moon opposition pattern continues, okay? The 4th house remains fogged and restricted. Uranus shifts from disruption by the perpetrator to disruption of health systems. And the ascendants change from concealment to movement. That's the narrative arc. Contained, disruptive, crisis, threshold. So when I compare these side by side, I don't see randomness, I see progression. It's like the same core engines stay active, but the angles and house emphasis kind of shift. That tells me that this isn't a disconnected series of events, it's a sequence. Okay, so now from there, we are going to jump to the 911 call chart. It's a different moment, different tone, and we're going to dissect this kind of like in the same way that we did the other charts. The angles, the moons, the clusters, the aspects, the positors, and see if there's anything that jumps out about location and timing. Now, we're going to start with the ascendant and descendant axis shift. To me, this is big. This is really big because here, Taurus is around 21 degrees, and that's where the ascendant is. Taurus rising is grounded, physical, concrete. It deals with what's tangible, what's found, what's materially present. And here's something really important. In the earlier overnight chart, like that Ring doorbell, I think it was, Taurus was over here on the perpetrator side, and Nancy is represented as the concealment, being in her home. Now this axis has flipped, okay? And this isn't random. So the overnight chart puts Scorpio, concealed, intensity, hidden activity on the victim side of the chart. Let me just go back there again, on the victim side of the chart. And the descendant, the perpetrator side, it kind of showed that physicality, that groundedness. But by the time the 911 call comes into play, now Taurus rises, that physical reality discovery, what's concrete. And Scorpio moves over to the descendant, placing secrecy, intensity, power dynamics on this side of the chart. So what was hidden earlier is now grounded in physical awareness. So this is the aftermath. This is when Nancy was discovered to be missing. This is when panic sets in and people call 911. Now let's take a look at the ascendant ruler of Venus. It's in Aquarius. Look at this shift. The stellium is now in the 10th house. OMG. That is that public awareness. Okay. The whole chart has completely flipped, it feels like. Now, the authorities, the status, official involvement, the entire chart lens, what this moment represents is rooted in the 10th house. Right here. Now let's take a look at the descendant rulers. Again, okay, traditional is Mars, modern is Pluto. Both are in Aquarius. Both are in the 10th house. Because this is actually 3 degrees. Well, this is on the cusp. Pluto's on the cusp. Not quite in the 10th house, but it's close enough. There's still something here. Like someone's trying to distance himself from this. Okay. So the other party energy is also sitting in the 10th house. So Venus is in the 10th house as well. That means this moment is less about hidden dynamics and more about a public narrative and law enforcement authorities being engaged here. This Aquarius cluster has been elevated and it's all concentrated in the 10th house. Mercury's 20 degrees Aquarius, Venus is 19, Sun is 12, Mars is 7, and Pluto over here is 3. Earlier charts had this engine way down here in the 3rd house. The local event. 10th house is the public record, the law. The engine didn't disappear, it moved upwards. That's escalation into official territory. The moon condition and aspects. Let's take a look at that moon. It's in the 4th house. Leo's in the 4th house. Home, property, foundation, end of matter. Emotionally, the focus returns to the house itself. Now look at the opposition pattern. Moon in Leo is still opposing this whole Aquarian cluster. All of it. Mercury, Venus, Sun. Sun's a little bit looser. Mars is wider. And Pluto's wide, but still part of the axis. The opposition pattern that was active overnight never left the story. This is consistency. And this tells me that the emotional conflict and tension signature is still running. This chart doesn't show a new initiation. It shows a continuation and exposure. Now, look at this. Uranus is in the 1st house. Uranus is going to be in Taurus for a while. So, it'll be moving out of Taurus, but not in the immediate future. The key placement here is the 1st house. That's that shock in that physical environment. A sudden disruption that was realized. Okay, Uranus in the 1st often correlates with unexpected awareness or physical shock at the scene. This gets that discovery moment. Saturn and Neptune. Okay, Saturn and Neptune now goes to the 11th and 12th zone. Right in here. Because Neptune is on the 12th, on the cusp. Remember what I said about the cusp energy, the 0 degrees, critical. That has been a theme, 0 degrees, throughout this whole situation. That's that raw energy, the purest form of that Neptunian energy, that illusion, that fog, that deception. And 11th house Saturn, close to critical degree, 28 degrees, and that's sitting in Pisces. We're getting there. Now, there's still that fog, still that confusion, a lack of clarity around the bigger picture. Okay, that is something that hasn't changed. It hasn't resolved. But this is to me screaming, what actions, Aries, think about actions, Aries ruled by Mars, okay, over here, what actions was taken by Mars, the defendant who did this, because Mars rules Scorpio. There is a correlation here. What did this person do with Nancy? And it's obscured. The actions taken is foggy, confusing, not understanding what really happened. That's very real. And the 11th house of groups, organizations, friends, restricted knowledge, friends feeling restricted, emotionally tied up in this, that there's a lot of uncertainty in the people that surrounded themselves with Nancy, that loved Nancy. There's and they're trying to get some kind of structured search also, but this whole case, people are still clueless, right? I don't know if there's been any new developments since I started working on these charts. I haven't looked because I've been busy trying to dissect these charts. Anyhow, I know I kind of really I think I went a little bit deeper than what I planned, but it jumped out at me. When something jumps out, I got to mention it, just like Pluto over here in the 9th. And I'm saying it's in the 9th because it's like right there on the cusp. That's critical. To me, that's somebody trying to flee the scene and not be in the public eye all of a sudden. Pluto's disruption, remember? Somebody feels like their life has just been disrupted and upheaval here. And the 9th house, means a lot of things. Part of it's education, taxes, but it's also long distance travel. This could also be Savannah all of a sudden picking up and needing to run to Tucson. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Savannah is a ways away from Tucson, Arizona. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the depositors and rulership chains. I didn't know if I was going to do this in the 911 call, but I think it's necessary. I'm not skipping it. Okay, so let's start with the Taurus rising with Venus. Okay, Venus is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, traditionally Uranus modern. Okay, and that's Uranus right there, or not, that's Neptune, sorry. Uranus right here in the first, and Saturn right here in the 11th. So this is kind of ultimately funneling into the physical scene, the house, and the foggy institution or hidden element, 11th, 12th Pisces zone. So right there, in layman's terms, means Nancy's hidden. Her body is hidden. That's the other thing I want to point out about Saturn. Saturn is the physical body, disrupted, okay? A lot of earth energy hidden away, buried. In the very first chart, I think I said something about she could be in a damp, wet place, elevated place. Here we go. She's hidden, layman terms. Now, over here we have Scorpio. Scorpio's ruler is Mars and Pluto. Mars is the modern. Pluto's the modern. Mars is a traditional ruler. Okay. Again, we're going back to that Aquarian energy. Again, back by Saturn, or ruled by Saturn and Uranus. So we're back over here. Concealed. Hidden. And let's just kind of throw in this conjunction here. Hidden. The perpetrator hid the body or hid Nancy. Whether she's still alive or she's deceased, I'm not confirming or denying either one. I think I've armed you with enough information for you to draw some conclusions. There is still no single final depositor. Some distribution authority structure, as the earlier charts, that consistency matters. Now, I think that says a lot about the 911 call. At the time that it was placed, a lot of questions, a hell of a lot of questions. But what's being obscured is where she is located. Now, if we go over here to the 8th house, you see there's nothing there. And the 8th house is being ruled by Sagittarius. Long distance travel away from the home. Put a cap in that. There's no planets here, which means there was no interference in transporting Nancy to wherever she is at right now. And let's take a look at Jupiter down here, also in the 3rd house of short-term travel, and that's in Cancer, the home, or the ruled by the home. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and the moon is in the home. That there says something too. I'm kind of wondering, and I'm thinking back to this chart here with the Gemini, and up here, the activity in the 8th house, Cancer. After this happened, 3rd house, all this movement here of the communication. What are we going to do here? Intuitive hit that I'm picking up on. Could she have been moved twice? A temporary place short term, maybe even partially out in the open, expanded. Okay, thank you. I just heard it. Expansion beyond just the neighborhood, local. Okay, that kind of makes sense. All I know is there's like some kind of desperation here to get her out of town. But anyhow, the moon in the 4th is very strong. That keeps tying that emotional focus back to the home and property. Nothing here screams remote location. This chart feels like realization, discovery, public escalation. If she left the house, that likely occurred earlier during the overnight. So at this point in time, she didn't leave the house. She was probably already gone back here. Okay. So this is not the departure point. Obviously, this chart is reflecting the aftermath after she's already gone. Timing. Not sure how good this timing is going to be, but we're going to see. The moon opposing that pattern dominated the doorbell and the pacemaker charts. That opposition is still present here. That suggests that there's a critical window occurred between overnight and the opposing cycle. By noon, we're not seeing any fresh triggers. So it's done. She's somewhere. She's left somewhere, still breathing, or on the other side, whichever the case is. So what we're seeing here is a continuation, not a final destination. So the 911 chart, it shows exposure, not initiation, because of this 10th house. The axis flips from concealment to physical reality. The Aquarius engine rises into the 10th, the house of authorities, but the same moon opposition pattern remains. It tells me the pivotal moment happens earlier, overnight, and this chart reflects public turning point. That's where we are left. I was going to do a 3-chart closing sequence, but I don't think that's necessary because I kind of bounce already between charts. But that's where we are in this point in time. Things are going to come out, but I feel like there's crucial clues in the home environment, in the family environment. Some family members may have important information. So I'm going to leave the charts there. The next video that I put out will most likely be the card reading. Trying to maybe expand on these charts, certain points in these charts that we could throw cards on. Not doing this in this video because this video is probably one of the longest that I've done in probably since I started Idaho 4. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you were educated. I sure the hell was. I've got my thoughts. Feel free. I will leave comments turned on this video also. Leave comments on your thoughts on these charts. Until next time, I am dropping the mic.